Buenos and half a day. The Committee on Education and Infrastructural Advancement, Border Protection and Maritime Transportation, Guam Preservation and Self-Determination, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, Federal and Foreign Relations will now convene for this virtual oversight hearing regarding the Guam Customs Quarantine Agency. Today is Tuesday, February 9, 2021, and it is currently 1:04 in the afternoon. For the records and in accordance with the open government law, public notices were sent out via email to all senators, stakeholders, and all main media broadcasting outlets on Friday, January 29, 2021, and the second notice on Thursday, Friday, 4th, 2021. Notice of today's hearing was also available on the Guam Legislature's website. Present with us today is Senator Mary Torres, who is our Vice Chair, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Telo Taitigui, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator James Moylan, and Senator Tony Yata. Thank you, Senators, for being here. Before we proceed with the virtual oversight hearing, the legislature has general rules of conduct that must be followed. All must abide by the rules of conduct and quality assurance standards. Please keep your video on at all times and ensure you are in a room with little interruptions and adequate lighting, specifically to make sure the participant face is visible at all times. The host of this hearing will mute participants until called upon by the chair. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted and that you are speaking into your microphone. Members of the committee wishing to speak may indicate via the in-app feature chat box. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Each member will be allowed to pose questions as guided by the chair. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the hearing by the host. Good afternoon. I call for this virtual oversight hearing today to provide our community with an update of the Customs and Quarantine Agency. We would like to better understand the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency's procedural guidelines in addressing cargo container ship throughput inspections and the manifest information relative to Public Law 35-105. We will also discuss the inspection schedule and Canine unit handlers' responsibilities while conducting cargo inspections. The agenda today for the oversight hearing include the cargo throughput inspection schedules per day, per month, and per year for fiscal year 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. It will also include discussions on the staffing pattern for Canine unit handlers and customs fines and penalties, revolving fund status, manifest information for all incoming cargo container ship prior to Guam's point of entry. I would now like to welcome the director, Mr. Ike, and the Chief of Customs, Chief Perez. I see Colonel Tyron. I don't see who's to the right of you, Director, but I will go ahead and pass it off to you so that you can brief us on who is present today and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Senators and members of the hearing committee. My name is Ike Paredo, and I am the Director of the Customs and Quarantine Agency. Before we begin, I would like to thank each and every one of you for the opportunity to discuss our operation as it relates to the ports of entry. Every day, 120 men and women of the Customs and Quarantine work diligently to protect our borders, and it is my honor to lead and serve them. The Customs and Quarantine Agency is the first line of defense. The mission is to protect our island, its people, and resources while facilitating legitimate trade, commerce, and travel. We enforce local and federal laws, securing our borders and protecting all ports of entry, ensuring physical, social, and economic security of Guam. In October of 1995, the governor of Guam passed the Customs, Agriculture, and quarantine inspection service charge into law under Public Law 2345. The Customs Agriculture Quarantine Inspection Charges program authorizes charges for passengers and cargo inspection service rendered by the agency at our borders, which created a funding source that can be used to operate the service charge facilities and achieve CQA border enforcement operation. Today, the mission of the agency has expanded since the late 90s when CQA had a healthy 235 officers. Since September 11, terror attacks have resulted in an increase of federal laws aimed at prevention of terrorism. CQA's ability to fulfill our tasks has been negatively impacted because of reduced personnel, training, equipment, vehicles, and lack of technology. As mentioned earlier, the agency is currently staffed with 120 officers to protect our borders. As a community's first line of defense, acquiring necessary personnel and equipment are vital towards taking a firmer interdicting movement of contraband and other harmful items into our territory. The organizational structure of the agency comprised of inspection and control, special enforcement division, logistics and support, and of course, administrative division. For today's hearing, I would like to focus on the inspection and control division. This division is charged with the responsibility of airport operations, areas, which has two sections and comprises more than 40% of the total personnel of the agency. This section is responsible for performing clearances service for arriving aircraft and passengers at Antonio Wampa International Airport and at Anderson Air Force Base. Cargo operations under this particular division accounts for close to 20% of the total agency personnel. Its area of responsibilities includes the airport cargo section, the United Postal Facility, and the Guam Plant Inspection Facility at Eden. It is responsible for the inspection and facilitation of commodities, partials arriving or departing Guam through air freight means and the use of postal service system. And lastly, maritime operation. This section comprises of about 16% of the total workforce. Located at Jose D. Leon Guerrero Port Authority of Guam and PD, additional areas of responsibility include the Hagatna and the Agate Marina and U.S. Naval Station Guam. This section is responsible for the clearance and facilitation of customs formalities of all seagoing vessels, passengers, crew members, and ocean freighted commodities arriving or departing at this area. Madam Chairman and Senators, COVID-19 that is upon us today has greatly impacted the funding source of this agency. Passenger arrivals at the airport has drastically decreased the last 10 months. The average passenger fee generated at the airport today is $27,000 a month as compared to 1.2 million before the pandemic. As a result, the agency is realizing a budget shortfall of approximately 2.4 million for fiscal year 2021. With all these challenges that the agency is facing, I would like to commend customs officers for their continued support in protecting our island, our people, and our resources. Madam Chairman, I am ready for your questions with regards to our operation here at the agency.
Thank you, Director Pareto. And can you please just introduce those who are representing the Customs and Quarantine Agency who are present today?
Okay, to my right here is Colonel Francis Barron, is the division head for inspection and control. And to my left, to your right is Chief Vince Ferris, Chief of Customs.
Thank you. Okay, my first question, Director Pareto, is that Public Law 35-105 gave Customs and Quarantine the ability to work to create a manifest information and automate it. And so, what is the status of that? Have you started to build a quote or RFP, or is it starting in it? And what is the phase plan on how it's going to be
Okay,
implemented?
Senator. With respect to that particular uh, public law that was just enacted, we have initiated a committee to
Okay.
start with the regulation so that we can identify all the means that we need to enforce as it relates to the manifest bill. And so that's the first step that we're doing right now.
And who is in the committee, and what is your committee called?
Uh, Actually, the committee chief, I'll defer that to you.
Okay, so in the committee, we have members assigned from the Logistics and Support Division and several other individuals who are assigned from the Inspection and Control Division. And
Can
the
you,
purpose of course,
Chief,
is
I'm
to
sorry,
develop the
you're,
rules and
Chief
to,
Perez, you're coming in broken. Can you please speak into the microphone? We can't clearly hear you.
I'll step up close to it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I might block the
Much better.
view, but we have members assigned from the Logistics and Support Division and as well as the Inspection and Control Division. And their purpose is, of course, to take a look at the public law that was passed and to start generating the way forward and developing the rules and regulations with the input from the stakeholders.
Okay, have you looked at Customs and Border Patrol for their rules and regulations? Have you just had any discussions about that?
That has been part of the discussion. So the committee is taking a look at everything that as far as resources that are currently available. If you take a look at the public law that was generated or that was passed, you can see that there's a lot of similarities. So yes, that's also being taken into consideration.
Okay, and who is the lead person that you have in charge of creating these rules and regulations?
I believe the president for that particular committee is Captain Barbara Tayama.
Okay. Is there a timeline that you have to move forward with this?
We've already had our first sit-down meeting, and they've already had several meetings. And so the purpose of their planning is also to establish the milestones as well.
Okay. So when will we anticipate the next meeting for the milestones that will be established and some of the concerns or things that they will address in accordance with the law?
My understanding is that they're meeting every week. I'm not sure if it's once or twice a week.
Okay.
But once we get all that information as to the timelines, I can give you a more concrete idea.
Okay. And how often have they been meeting since? When did the committee first start up?
If I'm not mistaken, it was several weeks ago already.
Okay. So it's fairly new.
Yes.
Okay. So in January. All right. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Mr. Pareto, we have several divisions that was given to us by Customs and Quarantine Agency for the staffing pattern for those that respond to the port operations. We have the contraband enforcement team. We have the Customs, Agriculture, and Quarantine. The drug detector dog unit. And then we have the container inspections. Can you please explain to us if these personnel are specifically for port operations, and do you have an an identifier that makes Customs and Quarantine Agency officers designated specifically to the port and those that are just designated specifically to the airports?
Yes, Senator. Uh, the staffing pattern that was provided identifies that there are line officers assigned to the port specifically for port operations. If I'm not mistaken, currently there's a total of 13 officers that are assigned down at the port that will be handling the responsibilities of all vessels and cargoes coming in at that particular port of entry. The drug detector unit are assigned to the Special Enforcement Division, are also a part of this team on an on-call basis. Other than that, we have also a team, which is the Maritime Inspection Contraband Unit that also works down at the port, to include a team, an X-ray team that moves our back scanner into the port for screening of containers down at the port. The other sections, for example, the airport has its own staffing pattern, and today the total number of officers that are assigned to the airport is currently 56 officers that are assigned up to the airport. And the airport is a 24-hour operation, and the officers are located within the airport to include the postal system and up at Anderson Air Force Base.
Thank you. At any time, do the custom officers that are assigned to the port work at the airport? Or vice versa?
If there's a request to assist at the airport, yes, we can move some of these officers if there's a need for it.
Give the example of the COVID-19 when they tested positive and we shut down.
Yes, for example, during the COVID-19, we had an officer that tested positive at the airport. So we had to isolate a total of 15 officers at the airport, and we need to look at other means of moving resources. And that was one of the situations where we had to at least detail officers temporarily. And I think for that case, about 2 days that we have to move resources to the airport from the port.
Okay, and can you please explain to the public what is the process of the container inspections from when it hits the port of entry?
Okay, the inspection process down at the port starts with the scheduling of arrival of vessels coming into the port, which is known as the notice of arrival. Notice of arrival will be given to the customs office. At that point in time, manifests will also be presented at times to the office. The supervisor down on the port will then start reviewing the manifest. This is where the process starts, where the supervisor will start reviewing the manifest, identifying where the container is coming from, making assessment insofar as the type of inspection to be conducted on those containers that are scheduled to arrive. Screening will be the first phase. Once the supervisor identifies all the containers that are coming in, proper screening of the containers will also be shared with the X-ray team. The team will also make notice of any type of inspection that's required for scanning. So the X-ray team supervisor will work with the supervisor at the port and determine those containers that are to be expected for clearance. Once the vessel arrives, the agents will provide the entry documents to the importers. The importers will then present the entry documents to customs down at the port. The officers that are assigned at the port will review the entry documents. During that particular time, they can also screen the documents, both from the bills of lading to include the invoices that are attached and other documentation as it relates to the cargo. And from there, the officer also makes a determination whether there's additional inspection that needs to be conducted on that particular basis. For example, a shipment might require special permits. So the officer will recognize that and tag that container for inspection. Then from there, a schedule is conducted for officers to start performing the inspection throughout the port. Secondly, we have the other type of inspection where we work with the freight forwarders. They have consolidated shipments that are coming to containers, and we have satellite inspection stations throughout the island. Today, I think we have 8 satellite inspection stations known as the container freight inspection. These stations are regulated by customs. Permits are approved to operate this particular freight stations, and we conduct inspections regularly on these facilities at the port. And so that is the process of the inspection at the port.
Is Customs and Quarantine able to screen all the cargo containers coming in on a daily basis?
Yes, Adonai. Screening for all containers is 100%. All containers must be screened, and that's the process that takes place at the entry window down at the port.
What is involved in the screening process?
The screening process is that all documentations, all importations that are coming through the port or exiting the port must be entered and passed for inspection or to pass to continue on out into commerce.
Okay, so in the screening process, just to clarify, you receive the documents, the manifest, and you use the X-ray team to ensure that what is on the manifest is inside the container for every container coming in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what warrants additional investigation? So
There's
Chief.
several factors.
I'm sorry, Director Pareto. Can I just take a step back real quick? After you do this screening and the X-ray, when do you weigh the contents to ensure that the weight mirrors the contents that are inside the container?
Actually, that process
Okay, I think there's probably been internet issues on their part. So we'll just take a quick 3-minute recess and we'll try to get Customs and Quarantine back online. Can we go to recess, please? Thank you. Okay, everyone, we are back on recess. We have Director Pareto back with us, and we were discussing about the screening of the containers and the confirmation of the weight as it reflects on the manifest to the contents within the container. And so can you please just discuss that with us, Mr. Director?
Okay, again, going back to the weight, Madam Chairman, officers use the bill of lading and relates the weight on that bill of lading as what is related on the invoice that's presented on that document for entry. We don't physically take weights on the container. Uh, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Port Authority that does the weight for containers.
They take it to the weigh station.
Yeah.
Does the weight station happen before you do the inspection or after you do the inspection?
I am not too sure of that, Madam Chairman, but I'm pretty sure it's on their way up.
Right.
Because the weigh station is located outside the port.
It's the last part of the process, right? Is that correct or no? Have you been called?
Yes.
Have you been called? Has Customs and Quarantine ever been called back to reinvestigate a container if the weight does not match up to what should be shown within the manifest?
No, we haven't. We haven't had that experience.
Okay. All right. I will now ask my colleagues to ask any questions of you, Mr. Director. Thank you very much for your cooperation and the information that you have provided for us today. I'll start with the Vice Chair, Senator Torres. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Senator Nelson. I want to go back to Bill 360-35, which is the manifest law now. When Colonel Tyron was testifying at that public hearing for that bill, he mentioned that there was a technical assistance grant that was identified and awarded in the amount of $300,000 that would have helped with the technological aspect of implementing the bill and also to help Customs and Quarantine. Is there an update to that $300,000 federal grant? And will that facilitate you in meeting your goals of digitizing the manifest submission?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Yes, we do have the 300,000 grant. We're in the process right now, if I'm not mistaken, in line with BSP, Business System Planning. We have already sent out the RFP for that particular project, and that is to automate customs. And the RFP is to provide an assessment of what is needed for the agency to start the automation process. They're going to map out the operation. They're going to provide all the information that we need. They're going to identify the partners that we need to work with, such as the Port Authority, the freight forwarders, and other stakeholders that's needed in order for us to fully implement an automated system for customs. So that's in the process right now. The RFP is out for that. That's the first phase of automating customs.
Excellent. Congratulations. And I hope that the effort continues on and you're able to accomplish your goals very quickly. I had a second question also in one of the handouts that was provided to the committee, which is your report on Customs X-ray unit scanning statistics on maritime section. There was and it goes from 2017 all the way through 2020. And I want to ask you, in 2018, towards the latter months, there's a notation that the X-ray van was inoperable due to mechanical and technical issues. And then that inoperability continued on through 2019. And so does that X-ray machine, because there was no data provided as a result of it being down, but does that mean then that inspections were done more through a screening and an opening of items? Or, I mean, how does the machines being down affect your ability to intercept or to inspect cargo that is questionable?
Yes, ma'am. Again, thank you for that question. The information that was provided, yes, it showed that in 2018, the X-ray backscan scan was down. We had a problem during that particular time. My information is that we had problem with procurement in making sure that the maintenance agreement for this particular machine backscanner is is uh, is provided, and the GSA needs to work on making sure that the agreement and the funding source is identified. When I came in 2019, that was a priority for my administration. I made sure that the first 6 months during my tenure with the agency is that I aggressively move forward with meeting with GSA to find out what is the whole bank with trying to fix the back scanner. And we've been going back and forth for 3 months, stating that it's a procurement problem with respect to how the maintenance service is to be provided. So I finally I worked with the Port Authority of Guam, thanks to the General Manager Roy Respicio, and we managed to work together and make sure that we work with GSA in trying to mitigate and find out what is the best way to have the machine back and running. And that's where the port came in and took the lead, because actually that particular back scanner was to the Port Security Grant, and it has something that is tied in with the Port Authority of Guam. And with respect to the second question, yes, it has definitely impacted the inspection process, because that means that now we have to concentrate more on trying to physically conduct the inspection because of the absence of the back scanner X-ray machine. And once the machine is back in order, and I think it took almost a year just to get that machine running. Thank you.
And did the port help you to fund any of it, or was that just borne by you? I know that initially they got the grant from a federal grant to stand it up, but was that primarily their mitigation, or was that customs and quarantine, or does it matter?
There was a share, Madam Senator, there was a cost share on that particular machine, both port and customs.
Okay, I noticed also in your testimony, you were talking about the areas of inspection that you're in charge of handling, which is really quite intensive, and I commend you for your efforts. But one thing that I want to ask, because many people wonder about the United States Postal Service, the clearing of any mail that comes in destined for the United States Postal Service has to be unladen primarily at the airport. Is that correct? It comes in mostly through air transport?
Yes, ma'am. There's I would say that a great majority of the parcels are coming into the airport. Now we also do have parcels that are coming in at the seaport.
At the seaport, okay.
Yeah.
But all of those are subject in the same way to your scrutiny and to your clearance, right? To be unladen and to be discharged to the consignee, right? So it because many people wonder about the purview of customs on postal items, but it actually is like any other cargo, correct? That has to be screened and be released by your agency, correct?
Ma'am, let me just clarify that we do have authority to inspect international mail at the post office. We don't have authority to inspect domestic partials coming in from the United States. What we're doing with domestic uh, partials coming into the United States is that we are utilizing the drop detector dog just to screen domestic mail, but we don't have access to the mail unless we get the permission from the postal inspector.
I think that was very important for you to distinguish because that's where a lot of the confusion happens with regard to probable cause and warrants and that sort of thing. So that is another tier that you are talking about, right? Where there's suspicious packages, then there's another type of relationship with you and would it be DEA or who would be the authority? Are you in Guam Police? What
It's
would
the U.S. Postal Inspector that controls the.
it's a U.S.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Postal, okay. Because I think for many people
Yes,
that
the
is,
U.S. Postal Inspector has the authority.
okay. And I think Director, that is one of the areas of confusion for many in the public in terms of when we're interested in drug interdiction efforts, you know, where the lines of command and authority begin and end. Much the same way when we had the discussion with the Port Authority, many have the impression that somehow the Port Authority can be responsible for the inspection of cargo because they unlaid it and they, you know, but they are not in fact the enforcers of that. And so those are the sorts of delineations that are very helpful when you discuss, because then people understand where everybody's role begins and ends and who the authorities are for inspection, for enforcement, and those sorts of things. So I really appreciate this dialogue because it just helps everybody to understand where, if there's assistance needed to make everybody's jobs more effective, you know, what is that degree of assistance? And I think you're helping us to understand when we think about cargo inspection, drug interdiction, or even, controlling invasive species, those sorts of things. It helps us to understand, you know, where the roles are. So I appreciate that.
Yes,
But I'll let,
ma'am, and you're right in that. You're right in that. Customs has the authority on all our borders. We control all the imports that are coming in. We also have control in the inspection process of all vessels and contrivances coming in at our borders.
okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll let the others have a chance to ask questions. It's Masi to the three of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Shelton, do you have any questions at this time?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for the information and the discussion today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing about the situation with the X-ray machine and the maintenance issue. And so if you can also touch on any other vulnerabilities or gaps that the department has when it comes to drug interdiction that can somehow shed some light, a little more light on the situation that we can address here in the committee.
So, what are the reasons that you think would be beneficial?
Yes, thank you for the question, Senator. The resources that we're talking about is, yes, we are in dire need of the additional manpower to protect our borders. We have always been short of personnel within this agency. And let me just go over some of the process of why we get into this type of situation. For the last 20 years, Customs has been self-sustaining, meaning that we collect revenues at the airport to support our operation. And the revenues that we've been collecting for the last 15, 20 years was enough to meet the operation needs of the agency. And that has always been the case. The problem that we have is that we never had money for recruitment. We never had money for equipment such as high-tech technologies that are being used at the borders at this point in time. If you really look at how the budgets for customs have been administered, the ceiling that customs is being allowed for every fiscal year is dependent on how much we collect. So if we collect 12 million for this particular year, and our operation just to operate customs is about 12.6 million, then as you can see, we will use the revenues that's generated from this fee to support the operation, but we never have the resources or the funding that's needed to continue the recruitment process. And that's what's needed within the agency. We cannot just recruit now and wait 6 years later to offer another recruitment to improve our manpower with the agency. So that's the problem that we have. We need to continue recruitment because people are leaving us. Officers are retiring. They're moving to other federal agencies. And in this case, this is very prevalent in my agency. Today, a total of 34 officers within the last 15, 16 years have transferred from customs to our federal counterpart, which is CBP. And I don't blame them because the pay is better there, and they have met the qualifications, and that's why a lot of them are moving there. Even if you look around here on our island, we have federal agencies such as CBP, we have the ICE office here for enforcement, and if you go to these offices, you will see that there are several customs officers that are now manning those offices. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And so the biggest gap that you experience as a department is human resources, from what you've just shared with us. And so what is the number of officers you are looking to recruit?
Now, when I first assumed this responsibility as the director of the agency in 2019, the agency, when I came in, had a total of 112 officers. My goal when I came in was to increase our level of over 150. Right now, we're only at 120. I will sure like to increase that number, maybe all the way up to maybe 150 or 160, at least to be at a stable in so far as protecting our borders.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. Senator Perez, do you have any questions at this time?
Yes, thank you, Senator Nelson. I just want to thank the panel for being here today. I do have, I guess, maybe some additional questions regarding, so in the last budget cycle, there was, I believe testimony that was provided that there were 30% of the, I guess, the freight that was inspected. I was wondering if you can clarify what you meant by that and what has changed from the time the budget cycle. I think, so Director Pareto, I think that was the testimony that you provided during the budget cycle.
In the budget cycle, what we're trying to say is that screening process of all cargoes should be 100%. That's the screening process that needs to be applied at our borders. The remaining percentage is based on risk assessment and other types of variables that involves the inspection process. A lot of times, probably intelligence information that's being provided to us. We will increase the type of inspection that's needed for that particular time. For example, if we do receive information about vehicles being used to move illicit drugs into our borders down at the port, then we will move or reevaluate the inspection process and conduct 100% inspection on all used vehicles coming into the island. And that's how those percentage changes. In addition to that, we also, as I mentioned earlier, that we have a partnership with the freight forwarders, and we allow the freight forwarders to have a container freight facility outside of the port that's regulated by customs. And we work with them in moving containers to this particular site with the officers who conduct inspection of all those containers that are moving to the container inspection station. And that's, I think to date, we have 8 approved inspection stations that our officers are allowed to proceed and conduct their inspection at that time.
Thank you for that clarification. Can you just give us maybe a ballpark estimate of what percentage of those are positive for drugs?
If I was going to give you a percentage of what the interception looks like with regards to illicit drugs coming into our island at this point in time, I'm going to say that 95% of methamphetamines that are coming into the island that we've intercepted are originating from the post office. The remaining percentage are coming in at cargo here at the airport and at the airport passenger terminal.
Interesting. Just, I guess, a question regarding legislative support. Do you see any ways that we can support your efforts legislatively?
Yes, ma'am. Officers right now are questioning why is it that they're not receiving your 10% hazardous pay. With this pandemic that's upon us, according to the law that was passed, law enforcement officers are entitled to 10%, in which my agency is part of that 10%, but the officers are questioning why is it that they're not entitled to 10% when the law is specific, when it states that upon exposure, officers under that particular statute must be provided the 10% additional pay because of the hazardous environment that they're working. And so that is a problem that I'm confronting right now. The officers are trying to get a better picture as to why that you're denied that 10%.
So I just want to go back to the response that you had regarding you estimate about 95% of meth is coming from the post office. What is the basis for that? Given certain structural facilities are not functioning. I mean, is there, what is the basis for that? I mean, I know what we see. Perhaps it's based on what we're intercepting at this point. But yeah, what is the basis for that? What is the other evidence to support that?
Are you talking about the 95% of the drugs that we're intercepting?
Right. But so that's what we're seeing right now. But given that there are certain inoperable, like the X-ray machines are not properly functioning, is there a basis for what I'm saying is that how we maximized our efforts at the ports, other than the postal service, to ensure that they're not coming through.
Now let me just say this: that with regards to the port, the seaport, and this is evident based on all customs administration. The seaport is a hub for any criminal activity as it relates to the introduction of illicit drugs coming into our borders. And we understand that. And I'm not saying that it's not coming in at the port. We just need to work more aggressively in trying to get more information about how this particular illicit drugs are coming into our island. And that's the biggest problem that we have. I've been working with my counterparts, DEA, US Customs, ICE, in trying to at least get the information that we need to ascertain whether or not there's a conspiracy going on down at the port at this time. And hopefully that we can work together, because we've been trying real hard to also make sure that we prevent and deter drugs from coming in on all these other ports of entry, such as cargo and the port. And I can say that, yes, we haven't seized methamphetamines down at the port the last 5 years. And with that, we are trying, and we will continue to try our best, because that's why we're there, is to deter and detect illicit drugs coming into the borders. What we need, from my perspective, is that we need, as an agency, to be more proactive. We need to be more present down at the port. But with the resources that I have, that's what I can offer at this point in time. We will work with what we have. A lot of question has come up. Why is it that you don't have your canines down at the port 24/7? And my answer is, when I became director for this agency, I found out that there were only 2 drug detector dogs operating at our borders. When I left the agency decades ago, there were 12 drug detector dogs. So 6 months after assuming office, we acquired an additional handler and had him certified to 3. The problem that I have is that a lot of these officers are members of our reserve components, the National Guards, the Army Reserve, and 2 of these handlers have to be deployed. One was deployed in 2019. He just got back. The other one left for 2020. And I think his story is about ready to end. So that's the problem that I have right now. I have initiated a program where I wanted to ensure that we can acquire more of these resources, such as the drug detector dogs. And so I found out that the agency had a certified trainer. And instead of sending 2 officers for training, I can say, by having those officers trained here on island, and then have the trainer go and pick up the 4 drug detector dogs that I can manage to fund. And that's one way that I can increase the resources, especially the drug detector dogs, so I can at least with additional 4 detector dogs, I can allow at least 2 of those certified dogs to be down at the port on a 24/7 basis.
Thank you, Director Prada. I understand these are challenging times, especially, with a big part of your budget being cut, and from, the fees that are coming, normally would have funded your operations. And this is going to be definitely, I think this is definitely a priority to try to get you resources. I think every government agency too is in need of that. And, I do want to work with you in regards to helping improve your situation. So thank you for all your efforts, and thank you, Senator Nelson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pears. Director Pareto, before we move forward, just to confirm on the 10% hazardous pay, this is the hazardous pay that you're talking about where all the other law enforcement agencies are receiving. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have to check back with you on that, because we were working with Customs and Quarantine into establishing the codes for Department of Administration to properly be able to give the officers their 10% hazardous pay. So this has been a project of Chief Perez, I believe, for the past 4 years since we were the last oversight. So we're just waiting on those codes to be corrected and then put it into the system for that 10% or for that hazardous pay. And then I do have one question before we move on to Senator Moylan. You stated that 95% of the drugs are found at the post office. Does that
Yes,
mean that CQA has all the resources it needs at the port to ensure the public that 100% of drug interdiction and invasive species prevention is being done with the resources that Customs and Quarantine has at the ports?
no, ma'am.
What
We
does that
need
mean?
additional resources down at the port to continue the programs that we need as stated by our mandate. Right now, the port is operating with an average of 13 line officers.
Mm-hmm.
If I had it my way, I will at least operate that a particular section down at the port with at least 25 officers. So we're still short of manpower down at the port.
Okay. However, you're able to control the drugs coming in through that port of entry at the Port Authority.
Not at this time. If I was going to tell you whether or not I have the resources down at the port, I don't believe I can say that yes, I have. I need more resources down at the port. Just because we're not seizing anything down at the port, that doesn't mean that it's not coming into the port. We just don't have the information to substantiate that particular process. But from my concern, resources is what we need to effectively control the importation of drugs, especially down at the seaport.
Okay, thank you, Director Pareto. Senator Moylan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panel. Director, we also, regarding the hazardous pay, we also introduced 3236. It's the hazardous pay for customs. I understand from the chairman that there are the issues in the codes, but I believe there is also an issue in the public law as well. So just as an update, that was moved to committee under Senator Joseph Augustine, and we'll be hoping for a public hearing to be scheduled. So that should offer assistance in the correction of your hazardous pay for customs. I know the chief there had explained the difficult time of what he has to do to go through all the documentation and the questioning from DOA. And so this will be very helpful to expedite that for you as well. And hearing you reiterate there, Director, that the officers are hoping to find closure for this soon. So Madam Chair, I'll be going over that also with you. I think this, in conjunction with what your plans are, will be very helpful to solve that problem for them. In addition, their Director, you mentioned 120 on your staff now, and the issues that you have of them leaving to other departments. I think recently in our discussion, did you say there you have one dog, canine person, and a couple of dogs, and one recently left, and they went to where and for what reason, please?
Yeah, John just left a little over a year ago. We had quite a few that left.
Yes, Senator. Thank you for the question. One of our canine, certified canine handler, left for us, and for the federal service.
We found out that it's 11.
And the reason why he left is because he was offered a better opportunity insofar as pay is concerned with the federal government, and that is with CBP.
Okay, so he's still that handler is still on island and he's working for the federal. Is that just right upstairs from you? It's the same at the airport now.
Yes.
right? Like the pay scale difference is almost double, I suppose. Right, double.
Yeah, a customs officer with 5 years of experience applies to CBP with the certification of completing the Academy of a GCC, enters CBP as a GS9. We can't compete with that.
Yeah. So what is that custom officer getting paid at CQA versus the federal side? What's the difference?
He was only a CQ1 when he left. He makes about 26,000 a year. He goes to CBP and starts with over probably close to 60,000 a year.
Yeah. No competition, right? Yeah. Well, congratulations to him. Unfortunately, we do have to make, I can see why the person would go, but we also have customs officers leaving the department for other departments in the government of Guam, also seeking higher pay, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Where would they go as peace officers?
One of our officers resigned and went to the federal fire. Probation. The other officers left and they went to probation. Probation. AG's investigator. To include the AG, the Superior Court Marshal. To include the Superior Court Marshal. And parole. Most recently parole.
Okay, so probation, Department of Corrections, Judiciary, parole and probation, and marshals as well at the courts. So peace officers just transferring after they get their post requirements completed for higher paying jobs, if not with the federal government, with the local government. So again, Madam Chair, that's something we're looking at on Bill 3436. That's the post attraction and retention incentive. It was recently assigned to Senator Joseph and Augustine. So we're hoping for a public hearing on that. I believe with the post committee, and Chief, what is your position at the post committee?
I am the representative for the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency. I used to be the vice chair until just last year.
Okay, thank you. So I understand you're working really hard there with Chief Ignacio, and his position is at post. It's what would it be, the president, or I'm not sure.
He is the chair. I believe the vice chair is Melanie Brennan.
Okay, thank you. So Madam Chair, this bill hopefully will allow the post committee to kind of equalize things for the peace officers so we don't necessarily have our well-trained customs officer wanting to leave just because of higher pay at other departments. So hopefully that will get a public hearing as well with Senator Joseph and Augustine's, but I'm hoping for support on that too.
Thank you, Senator. Just a reminder for everyone that we're focused on the oversight hearing today on the cargo throughput inspection processes, the staffing patterns within the port, and the customs fines and penalties revolving fund status. So I'd like to thank Director Pareto and everyone on the panel at Customs for being so flexible with us and entertaining our other questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one question on that line, on that note there. Chief, Director, there's the Public Law 34-112, and that's regarding the property turned over to you from the port. And how's it going with that project?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Yes, when I came in 2019 again, I was advised that the agency has just acquired a 4-acre lot down at the port, thanks to the Port Authority. I finally got the title, and I signed the title for the agency. We are now pursuing to build a container inspection facility down at the port. Now, where we're at with this project is that thanks to the Port Authority of Guam, they have managed to include that project as part of the master plan. and they allow their consultants to provide a conceptual design of the container inspection facility on how that particular infrastructure will be best utilized within that 4 acres of property. We have also come up with the design of the building, and I've got a cost estimate, thanks to Public Works, of around $10 million. I'm working with the front office. The administration is trying to secure federal funding for this particular project, and that's where we're at right now, is trying to secure the funding, and hopefully that we can start building that facility.
Okay, Director, do you have a deadline on that property transfer? And when is that deadline coming up? That you had to build?
The staff, I came here, I was told that there's a deadline that we need to adhere to insofar as building the infrastructure on that particular land. And I think this year will be the last year for us to make sure that we have to show that, yes, we're moving forward with the project. But I think that's where we're going to need help with the legislature to give us an extension on that particular law that limits our time frame to 3 years.
Oh, okay, Director. So basically, July of this year, if the building is not completed, the land goes back to the Port Authority unless the law is amended. So we'll have that bill for you. Pardon?
That's the law.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll be introducing that bill for you tomorrow, so we can get that extension for you, because that's important to have in order for the drugs too, and the invasive species. So I appreciate that, Director. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Mr. Pareto, are they going to relocate the piece of property that Customs and Quarantine was anticipating to build their facility on at the port?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So it's going to stay the same?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Tiedegree, do you have any questions at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, Director Pareto. Always good to see you, as well as Chief Paris and Colonel Fejeran. Thank you so much for being here today, and the flexibility that you've allowed us senators to ask. I know it's a little bit off too, and I'm going to try and stay within the realm and keep some of my other questions for staffing pattern. But you know, you mentioned and it was also mentioned earlier about the issue that Customs is having, because I've been tracking the Customs and Quarantine Special Fund, and you know, the 4.1 million that was appropriated to you, and the way it's tracking right now, it's like 300,000 plus every month. That's less than projected coming in. So you're looking at about a $3 million shortfall. So only collecting about 1.06 for I think it's 6479 coming into Customs. So looking forward to, Madam Chair, as well, what the plans are for Customs to deal with this incredible shortfall that you're going to be going through if we're still maintaining the same type of tracking. But as it was mentioned earlier, when you were talking about you know, where drugs are coming in, through which port of entry coming in, I mean, 95 is absolutely, you know, just through the post office. I mean, most big busts are usually done through the port, but I think because the Port Authority, but the lack of you know, Customs officers going down there, I know that we're all saying it's very difficult, and the loss of some officers to retirement and other areas. But you know, when cargo and the bill of landing is passed at the counter, and most of them are not physically inspected, why is that? I mean, it's because of the discretion of the officer's discretion on whether to go out to the yard and actually inspect it. Because from what I gathered, the bill of landing comes to the counter, right? And from there, it's up to the officer to go outside to physically inspect it? Or is it mandatory or at the discretion of the officer?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. First, let me just give you an overall picture of, the inspection process. And I'm going to relate this to other administrations throughout the world. Even today, if you look at any customs administration, the United States, for example, allows 11 million containers to come into the United States. The percentage of inspection that's physically conducted for those particular containers is roughly probably 5 to 7%. And there's a reason for that. The way we do business right now is that we have to strictly understand how containers are moving throughout the world. And what it is that as the containers are moving, we have to be more smarter in the way we do things, because we have to understand that we got to make sure that we don't impede commerce. At the same time, we try to do our best in trying to identify what contraband is coming into our territory. And so for me to say that each and every container is going to be 100% inspected, physically inspected, is impossible. It's impossible. We deal with the importers that are importing all these goods into our island. We conduct checks with this particular importers. We have a list of first-time importers. And so what we want to do is we want to spend our time on trying to understand where the need for inspection is, and not just that all the containers for inspection, because we will never get nowhere with that. We need to be more realistic on how we do things. That's why we need technology. And technology is the key in moving containers now. There's several variables in the inspection process. The officer is given that discretion. The officer will review the documents, will decide based on his training whether or not the container needs inspection. And there's a lot of variables. It can be an oversight or documentations are not in sync with the bill of lading.
Okay.
The officer might be concerned with the origin of that particular commodity that needs to make a decision insofar as inspection is concerned. The officer is then trying to realize whether to spend more time conducting inspection on importers that we have worked with so many years. We don't want to be spending our time with those type of importers. We want to work, or we want to check containers that we feel might be carrying something that's detrimental to our island. And that's how all this basis of inspection comes about.
Okay, thank you, Director Pareto, for that answer and that analogy of, I do understand there's quite a bit of containers coming in, and you do have to make a judgment call, especially if you have a lack of officers there to do these inspections. I realize that, but the numbers that you gave, 95% at the post office versus, the port or any other port of entry, do you have any justified evidence to that effect of those percentages? Is there any evidence to that?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay, I'll get that. I'd like to see that, those percentages and what, because I know at the airport, you pretty much do the same there as far as checking. So I'd like to see that. The other one is the weight station that you brought up earlier during your discussion on the weight station, and it's I believe it's operated by the Port Authority. Do you guys have access to that at any time that you need it?
No, ma'am. I'm not aware whether or not we have ever used the weight At the port. At the port. Up at the airport, let me just say,
At the port, the wait station. So do you have access to that at any time that you need it? I think the wait station is at the port, right? The port oversees the wait station, or does customs oversee the wait station?
no, we don't oversee the wait station.
Or at least utilize it. I'm sorry, maybe I'm using the wrong word. Utilizing it.
If we need to use it, then we'll just request, and I'm pretty sure that we can use it.
Oh, okay. And you have no problem of obtaining that usage then?
On the other hand,
Uh-huh.
the inspection process up at the airport, we do have a weight, a scale that we can use to verify the shipments if we need to at our cargo office.
Okay, I see. And is
It's
there
just a smaller volume.
okay. Is there a fine for unmanifested cargo, and what regulations are being followed? Is there any kind of fine? Or is it at the discretion of the director for opening of sealed cargo?
Yes, ma'am. We have regulations. In fact, it's a law. We have a container seal violation law that is applied here on island. And let me just give you an overview of that. Since I assumed office in 2019, I managed to assess or impose fines on container seal violations down at the port.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Director Pareto. I think customs and fines and penalty revolving is on the agenda. I'm sorry, asking for that, Madam Chair. We'll get more into detail when we get to that section of it. I'll try and stay on the agenda. There is another question I have with regards to the screening and detection equipment. Is that up to date to other U.S. jurisdictions, or are we still working with OT and BSP on that? I think you mentioned a little bit something like that for screening and detection of equipment. Is it up to date to U.S. standards, like other U.S. jurisdictions?
The backscatter X-ray is up to date. We have X-ray systems. You want to ask? Yeah. Yes. So the backscatter X-ray band that we purchased is up to date. And so part of our initiative is to also install a fixed container X-ray at the container inspection site that's being developed down at the port. Over at the international airport, we have a few aging X-ray systems. So if you talk about technology, yes, we are as up to date as we can be. With the limited resources. However, as technology changes, machines become obsolete. So today could be needing it in a few months, it could be obsolete. So that is one of the reasons why we need to make sure that we are on top of the technology game, especially moving from analog to digital. So baby steps, and we'll get there.
Thank you, Chief Paris, and I look forward to working with Director Pareto as well as Colonel Farron when it comes to looking through our use taxes that we're going to try and capture that we're working with you. Madam Chair, I've been speaking with Customs regarding use tax, and there, I believe on February 19th, a mock setup is going to come so that we can tour it and invite all the other senators to come to that. Would it be okay, Madam Chair, to ask about the fleet? I know I didn't see it on the agenda, but it's my last question with regards to the Customs and Quarantines fleet, current fleet. How many, what is the number of that? How many vehicles are in operation? How many are down? Do you have a maintenance section to support the vehicles that you do receive?
No, ma'am. We don't have a maintenance section within our agency. We just rely on using the vendors that are available based on the work order that we're putting out. Okay. But let me just give you a total number of our fleet. we have a total of 74 vehicles, 43
74.
are operable, and 31 are operable.
Okay, so 3 are down and 31 are working.
Yeah, a lot of these vehicles are over 14 years old.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I didn't hear that.
A lot of the vehicles are over 14 years.
Okay, 14 years old. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity and your patience for my questions. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Senator Blas? Okay, I
No,
think you, do you have any questions?
thank you.
No questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chief, Colonels, thank you for being here. And it was almost like old times that we're talking about these things. Chief, yeah, okay. Now let's talk 10 code. First off, there were a couple of numbers that were tossed out, and I think I need a little bit of some clarification on this thing. Chief, you said, or there was some discussion about 95%, and that it's coming, out of the post office. Is it fair to say that the 95% you're talking about is that 95% of the drugs you are intercepting are coming from the post office, as opposed to 95% of the total drugs coming from Guam?
95% of the meth that were intercepted are coming in to the post office.
Okay. And we all know that the scary part about this whole thing that we haven't discussed is that the 95% represents the 30% of the total drugs that average on the national average we confiscate off the streets, right? So
Right.
There's the bigger picture. We are capturing 95% of the 30% at the post office. So that means there's the 5 plus the 70%. So that's where you need that's where you need the help, is to basically tackle the 75% that's hitting the streets. No fault to you guys. You're doing your best that you can. Okay. I'm looking at all of you there, and we all work together. We have at one point in time, we spent time away from our families trying to interdict the drugs. So we know what we're talking about. And which goes me to the second question. Second concern. And I know this was out of the realm of what we were supposed to be talking about, what was brought about earlier. You're saying that your officers are complaining about not receiving the 10% hazardous, and then there was some just saying that what we're waiting for is the code to be able to input it. Really, gentlemen? It takes, how long does it take to input a code?
If I can answer, so we already are past the code. What it is that we developed a matrix in line with the public law that basically outlines our exposure. And so we adopted the matrix, we sent it to the Department of Administration, and it seemed like it was very problematic. So the last meeting we ever had, which was sometime, I believe it was either late last year or maybe the year prior, was that we were going to disregard, according to DOA, we were going to disregard the matrix, and we were supposedly, with the DOA's help, design a simpler method and process to be able to identify upon exposure. But keep in mind that COVID-19 hit, and so everything kind of just got put to the side. So yes, we did develop the matrix, we did develop the codes, we did submit it, and they were approved by DOA.
So you're telling me you threw the ball into their court, and now they're throwing it back into your court and saying now you're gonna have to justify everything all the way back to March. You're gonna have to develop a timeline and all of and recreate now time schedulings and exposures all the way back to March, when it was already done initially based on law. It appears, gentlemen, that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Again, it's not your fault, but it appears that what happens is that you know, all of this is not your doing, but you know, the doing of an agency that doesn't want to follow a procedure that they initially adopted and they initially told you to do. That's very, and I can see, you know, Mr. Director, you know, why they're upset at you. And I don't, you know, first off, I don't blame them, and thank you for being very forthright and honest. You know, it's very difficult, and really, guys, what you got to be proud of is you got a director that's going to sit there and going to say that my officers are complaining and they're not getting paid their overtime or their night differential, and they want to know, you know, where it's at. And now I'm sure that we here in the committee want to know that where that's at as well. So, and you said late last year, it's February 9th of this year. And I hate to see now what they're going to throw now a new issue in there. It says, oh, we can't do that because that was prior year. You see what I'm getting at? Okay, so Madam Chair, thank you for letting this happen and for letting this conversation happen, because that's something that that begs to be looked into. If we really want to know, and as far as cargo throughput and input and how we're going to be able to successfully interdict the drugs, no wonder why we're having a difficult time retaining customs officers. You know, I remember that was the struggle we had when we were all together. Okay, and you know, it continues to be a continuing struggle. I appreciate that in this later discussion, in this hearing, later discussions, we're going to talk about the fees and schedules, because, you know, like Senator, you know, Tidegree had stated, you know, there's some leakages, not to your doing, that are occurring that really is hurting your operations. I understand, and I for one here can greatly appreciate your frontline work. You're the very first tomorrow face that a person looks at when he steps off a plane or a ship. You're the very first representation of one. And if we can't fix that, if we can't help that, you know, there's a serious issue and there's a serious problem with that. So thank you, gentlemen. And unfortunately, you know, the conversations we're having today are conversations that become perennial, have become perennial. And you know, I can feel for you. Let's see how we can fix these ways. And I think, really, as we go on in this conversation, we're going to find that there are ways that should have been taken, that could be taken, and if we want to fix it, it has to be taken so that you can get the resources that you need. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Brown, do you have any questions at this time?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Sorry, I had to step out for a meeting here in my office, but I did want to check with Customs in terms of, I know they talked about what their current capacity and inspections were at the port with regards to their X-ray machine, but I just wanted to find out, has Customs fully taken over the maintenance? I know that Senator Torres had asked earlier about that gap during the inspection, why that had not occurred, I guess because the equipment was down. And part of the original agreement when the port acquired that under the port security grant was there was a 4-year period that the port would assist you know, Customs with regards to maintenance of the equipment. And then after that 4-year period, you know, that equipment would be transferred fully to Customs to address the maintenance. And the director had mentioned perhaps there might be some issue. Have they addressed the funding? And is that, you know, who's doing that responsibility? Because I mean, we do know that that equipment is certainly of value in doing inspections, even though I believe it's quite a limited amount, you know, of capacity in terms of actual inspection of containers coming through the port. But has that issue been addressed moving forward?
Yes, Senator. Thank you for the question. What's been happening is that yes, we're still dealing with the Port Authority. We have managed to verify the maintenance agreement, and it's in a working order right now. But we're still, what we're doing is, based on the maintenance agreement, the invoice that was submitted to us, we forward it to the Port Authority, because there's a certain percentage on the funding source for the maintenance of that. But it's been settled at this time.
So at least moving forward, hopefully it's less an issue, because that's a pretty big chunk of time, a whole year. And then with regards to that, to the actual x-rays that are being done, what percentage of the actual containers going through the port in an annual basis are you able to do the x-ray screening?
Okay, with respect to the x-ray machine, if we break it down, for example, domestic and foreign,
Mhm.
The machine is utilized for all domestic importation. We average about 1,161 containers that are X-rayed from domestic point of view, and from the foreign, about 1,275 containers are X-rayed. In addition to that, we also have a stats on using the X-ray machines to screen vehicles, both
Okay.
domestic and foreign, and break bulk of cargoes coming in at the port, to include pleasure crafts and boats that are coming in. And what's showing is that on an average year, for vehicles, a total of 206 from domestic and approximately 452 from foreign origins were screened with the X-ray machine.
Do you have that figure? I mean, is this annually?
Yes, this is annually.
And how does that, what percentage is this of the number of containers or vehicles that come into the island? So we can have a good idea of exactly what percentage of cargo or vehicles are actually being inspected by the scanning equipment.
Well, I don't have that information right now, the percentage.
Is that something, Madam Chair, we could ask them to provide to the committee? I think it'd be a good, because certainly more than a couple thousand containers get brought into the port. I mean, that's how much in a month is far more than that. So it would be good to know. I mean, just so that we're aware of exactly how much is being scanned. I mean, ultimately it'd be great if you had bigger scanning machines so that every container that leaves the port actually is scanned. Because that really represents, well, I'm sure for the efforts of your resources, you're able to come up with these numbers, but I'd gauge to verify it's probably a very small percentage to the overall amount of cargo coming into the island that's not inspected.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that we can provide that to them.
Okay, it would be good. One other thing I wanted to ask is if you guys do confiscate, if something's brought in that is not, if it's or it's not listed in the manifest, and the company or the individual bringing something in is not paying or didn't pay their taxes on it, what happens to these items? Where do they go, and what custody? And then how does customs deal with it? What do you do with the things that are confiscated for whatever reason they fall into they're not authorized to come in, or there may be fake, for all I know. It might be a fake Gucci purse for all I know. But what do you do with these items, and what happens to them?
It all depends on the regulatory agency, Senator. For example, intellectual property rights. If we come across those merchandise, we seize those, and then we dispose those items with respect to copyright. On other issues, if it's a vehicle that doesn't meet EPA requirements, EPA will take over the commodity and provide us the information of what needs to be done. If it needs to be returned back to the port of origin, or we need to just dispose of the vehicle. With respect to, for example, liquor, we turn it over to revenue tax. If it's cigarette, we turn it over to revenue tax. So if it has to do with medicinal, it's turned over to public health. So those are the agencies that are responsible for the commodities that are being seized at the port. And they make the final.
What do you mean by turnover? Do you turn over the actual items, or what do you mean by that?
Yes, we turn over to the regulatory agency.
And how do we verify that these things are properly disposed of? How does anyone verify what happens? I mean, if I'm bringing any illegal cigarettes, for example, I mean, how do we know that Rev and Tax has disposed of it? What's the chain of custody and what's the verification?
Well, the only thing we have is we have a chain of custody that we turn it over to them, and they make the final disposition of that.
So then we probably ultimately don't know then. You would not know is what you're telling me, even though you would have interceded at a point of entry, you don't ultimately know perhaps what a department may do with it once you've turned it over?
Normally they'll write back and identify the disposition process.
But you have no way of verifying it.
No. I mean, you know, if we question it, then maybe, yeah, we can look into it.
Yeah, maybe I just think it would be something to look into, because I'm just curious. I'm finding, you know, in the last few weeks that the follow-up with government to beginning to end of making sure things are followed through with is something we have a big gap in. And I'm just curious, you know, I think maybe it's something we need to look into is where does it go? I mean, it's nice to get a letter back, but how do you know what you know, if I'm the receiving agency, if there's no way of verifying, and who's the other party overseeing to make sure that things are properly disposed of?
That's a good question.
If it was illegal to begin with, for example, to be brought into the island, you know, how do you know I'm not taking it home, right? I'm just bringing it up. I just asking because I do wonder where those gaps are, and probably this is something we could look into. But yes, I think importantly, if I could just go back to my first question, if you could provide the committee within a reasonable time. All you need to do is quantify that with the, even the last few years with regards to the actual volume of containers, vehicles, and things of that nature that have been brought in, so that we can get a clear picture of exactly what percentage is actually inspected. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask these questions.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Taitigui, you had your hand up?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask again, just to clarify the vehicles again. Director, could you tell me again what those numbers were again? I know the first part you said was 74, right?
The total vehicle inventory was 74. Operational was 31.
Oh, 30.
And inoperable is 43.
43 is not working then.
Yeah, correct.
And 31 is working. So that's
Yeah.
Half of your fleet is not working.
Correct.
Okay. I'm sure you guys are working on that to get them up and running, but okay. Do you have a plan?
We try our best in trying to steer funding, ma'am. But right now, at this point in time, a lot of these vehicles are beyond repair.
You go through the LAPSO fund. You go through the LAPSO program, don't you? And in retrieving vehicles.
Yes, the majority of these vehicles came from that program.
From the LAPSO vehicle. Okay, but for 40 of them not working, 43 of them not working, and no plan. I think you need to come up with a plan, because this 43 vehicles sitting on the side doing nothing is not going to help. So I hope you have a plan very soon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just needed to verify. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. Okay, if there are no questions regarding the cargo throughput inspection, if you do have questions later on, we can always come back to it. But Mr. Director, we also want to talk about the staffing pattern for your canine unit handlers. Can you please brief us today? Where are you at with the canine unit handlers, explain the process that you have to undergo in order to acquire canine dogs and train their handlers, um, and the timeline, and what you anticipate that you need for the future, to better assess um, and to resolve or to achieve this drug interdiction and invasive species from entering into our island.
Thank you for that question, Senator. Okay, and I'm going to start with the the process of the drug detection dog training. Uh, Normally, what happens is that we select officers to attend training back in the mainland so that they can be certified as drug detector dog handlers. It costs the agency about $9,000 for one dog. And so what we're doing with this particular process is that a lot of this, the drug detector dogs that we have acquired are mostly coming from our grants, the Edward grants. And our plan is that instead, because of COVID, instead of sending 2 officers off island to undergo this training, I've decided that since I have a certified trainer with the agency, that trainer will conduct the training for this handlers here on Guam. And that's what we did. We started this training since November. And my information is that 4 handlers will be certified by the end of February. The challenge that I have with that is that because of COVID, we are unable to send a handler to the training center to acquire the canines. For one reason, the carriers are not ready to transport working dogs. And we're working with the carriers in trying to provide us a time frame as to when we can be able to acquire the canines back in the mainland and ship them to Guam. But we have 4 handlers that will be graduating at the end of February. And that would increase our staffing from 3 to 7. My goal is to continue with the training and selection of this particular handlers until I reach at least 10 drug detector dogs. And I'm hoping that I can achieve that within the next year and a half.
Madam Chair, may I please just ask for clarification? When you talk about the carriers are not equipped, are you talking about the airlines?
Yes.
I understand.
Yes. They're not allowing the transportation of working dogs at this time.
Because the issue of transportation of animals has been longstanding, so that there's no exception for working dogs or law enforcement or that sort of thing. And is it a policy, Mr. Pareto, of the airlines?
It was a temporary policy, and my discussion with the cargo manager is that they're hoping to open up that process in which we can be allowed to transport our canines from the training center into Guam.
Do you have any more questions, Senator Torres?
I guess I'm missing the timeline. Did Mr. Pareto have an issue with?
Can you explain if there's a timeline, Mr. Pareto, on for the
we were hoping, based on my discussion with the manager at the cargo terminal, that within the next 2 months, that they will be able to uplift the moratorium on the transportation of working dogs, and I'm hoping that they will implement that policy so that we can move forward with our program here.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Director Pareto, now that you currently have 3 canine unit handlers and 3 canine dogs, how often do they go and inspect at the port?
Actually, we have 3 canines. I mentioned earlier
Mhm.
that of the 3 handlers, 1 right now is on deployment and probably will be returning back later this year. So we have
Yeah.
2. So we have 2 on hand. And the question is, how often do we employ them down at the port? It all depends on the request, and it all depends on the arrival of the vessel that we're targeting with respect to utilizing the canine on this matter. Keeping in mind that my priority right now is the post office, and I'm utilizing the canines at 100% of the time at the post office because we are seeing results every day at the post office, even at this point in time. Over 100 pounds. We have seized over 110 pounds of meth just for 2020, fiscal year 2020.
So you are not utilizing any canine units down at the port?
If I'm not mistaken, we have an operation down there right now.
You just said that they're 100% at the post office.
Yes, yes.
So that means there's nothing to facilitate the needs of the port.
At this point in time, you're right.
Okay. Can you explain to us the process that is being conducted at the airport for the canine handlers? I'm sorry, the post office? For the
Yes. The canines are utilized to screen incoming mail. The screening process is only taking place at the request of our handlers to the postal inspector. In other words, we cannot just take the canine to the post office anytime. It has to be coordinated with the postal inspector. The postal inspector must be present for our canines to be screening mail at the post office, especially domestic mail. I'm talking about domestic mail. And so we've tried to work with the postal inspectors, and I've been getting at least fairly 3 times a week.
So you
Am I satisfied with that? No, I want 24/7 utilization of the canine at the post office, but I just have to be content with the schedule that I'm being provided because we have to understand that postal inspectors have other responsibilities. And a lot of these mails are coming in, especially 1 o'clock in the morning.
So does the postmaster call you and ask you to come and inspect, or you give them a schedule of when you would like to inspect?
I will turn down the postmaster. If the postmaster calls me up and said, "Hey, can you use the canine?" I will immediately send the canines to the post office. But normally we work with the postal inspector.
Okay. Have you had any requests from the port to bring down the canine unit to inspect the cargo?
Yes.
Are you able to meet all of their requests, or are the requests not being asked?
Senator, when I came in and I assumed the responsibility, I made it a point that the canines will be utilized 100% of the time of any vessel coming in that's transporting personal vehicles. So regardless whether the canine is available, if that particular vessel is coming in carrying used vehicles, canines are to be utilized. And of course, if it conflicts with the airport, with the post office, then I will put that decision on the division head to make that priority.
Okay, the concern that I have is you stated that the canine unit is prioritized for the post office.
Yeah.
100%. So, which means that even in a case where you would need to utilize this resource, there's only a timeline where you can utilize the dogs. And so if this resource is needed at the port and the dogs have already exceeded that timeline or met that timeline of work, then it's almost near impossible to go and do this request at the port.
That is true. We just have to make that decision and decide whether to forego the operation at the post office or move the canine down to the port because that vessel is coming in. The division head will make that decision.
Okay. Senator Torres, do you have any more questions before I move on to the other senators?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Pareto, you talk about requests for canine services, and with the post office, it's obvious that that would be from the Inspector General. So when you talk about people requesting the dogs to inspect certain cargo, that would mean your officers, right? The customs officers that are stationed or assigned to the port would be making that request? Because this is where I was talking about where the lines are and who's really in charge of inspection. So that's what you mean, right, by the request?
Yeah, the supervisor down at the port can make that request at any time.
Okay, okay. No, I was just wondering. Thank you very much.
Yes, and if the supervisor at the port makes the request and you've already exhausted the timeline of your dogs, are you able to meet that mission request?
It all depends, Senator. Again, that will be left up to the division head handling that section to make that decision.
Okay. Senator Blas, do you have any questions at this time?
We talk about the working time for the dogs. How much time is that? How much time can a dog work in a day?
Yeah, 20 minutes at a time.
The dogs are allowed 20 minutes within the hour.
And then they have a rest.
They need to rest after that.
And then they come back in.
And then they can come back and resume.
So they can work for 20 minutes and then rest for 40 and come back in 20, or I thought it was where they have to rest for a minimum of 8.
No, they can work for 20 minutes, then they can do a rest, because if we have 3 dogs, then appropriately the 1 dog is resting or 2 dogs are resting while 1 dog is searching. The challenge that you find is that, dogs, like humans, you have to give an assessment. If I don't feel like working out today and going to the gym, and I'm too tired, I'm not going to work out. If I'm overworked, I'm not going to want to do the work. So the whole point is to motivate the dogs to make sure that they're doing what they're doing and they enjoy it. I'm telling you this based on my experience as a drug detector dog handler myself. So we monitor the dogs. So you can't really say it's based on a specific time. Some dogs are raring to go every day, every minute. Some, after their first run, that's it for the day. So pretty much you just have to assess each dog, and the handler has to just make sure that he's very responsible with ensuring that the dog is not overworked. So could a dog potentially work the whole day? Yes, he could, but you just got to make sure that they have proper work-rest cycles, because the other thing to consider is that at the end of the day, they still have to rest, go to sleep, and wind down, and then the following day, they start the day over.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Senator Brown, do you have any questions at this time? Thank you, Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just getting back to the dogs again, I mean, I think it would be good also, at least on an annual basis, to let us know how often. You know, I understand you have only so much personnel and you only have three dogs that are trained in this area, but it'd be good to know how often in a year are the dogs actually at the port doing inspections? Not so much as request of anybody, but just going down there unannounced and unexpected doing inspections. Because I'm sure the drug dealers aren't going to be letting us know when they're bringing the drugs into Guam. So again, Madam Chair, if that's something that could be provided to the committee so that we can get an idea percentage wise of how often these dogs are actually down at the port as a main point of entry doing inspections. And then one other question I wanted to clarify. I mean, I understand, you know, the post office is under the federal jurisdiction, but do they also have their own resources to be able to I guess, determine if these packages coming in contain drugs? I mean, who actually does that for the post office? Don't they have the federal partners doing that work, since the post office is a federal entity, or is that really burden on customs? I mean, I'm just curious, how does that process work without giving us any great trade secrets here?
Our officers work closely with the postal inspector. We have an officer that is assigned to work with the postal inspector, and it's part of the task force that was put together, and they collaborate and work together in identifying partials that are coming into Guam. But the postal inspector must be the lead agent for that process.
Okay, but do they have other federal resources that can be involved in assisting them to do these type of inspections?
Yes. On an annual basis, the regional director that runs the enforcement, the postal enforcement aspect of the organization, will normally come to Guam on a quarterly basis, once a year, and do a saturation operation with respect to narcotic interdiction.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the same thing consistently happening at the airport or at the port. Wouldn't that primarily be customs?
Yeah.
Unless you have a joint inspection, which I'm sure doesn't happen that frequently, but pretty much that you would be the one, your entity, customs, would be the main law enforcement to actually go and do those type of inspections at the point of entry for the airport and the port.
You're right. Yes.
I mean, I assume, as you said, perhaps maybe you're finding we always read in the news that somebody has a box coming in, and they follow them around, and then they catch them because they're the ones that came to pick up the box. And so that may be the case. Of course, maybe most of it, as you mentioned, is coming through the post office. But if the federal government has additional resources they can use, and yet for the local side at our point of entry, we have limits because we're pretty much dependent on customs on a regular basis. It'd be good to know how we can help facilitate getting a greater presence for our own local interest of protecting our community. I mean, it's nice we're working with the feds, but the feds got more resources than we do, and we're limited. And yet, I don't have any comfort at this point, that we're saturating to a certain percentage, being able to catch these things coming into the island. Maybe we're not finding them because we're not able to look for them in the first place, either limited resources or personnel or whatever the case may be. But it doesn't give me any comfort, and perhaps it doesn't give you comfort, but it's just a concern, because it's not just, we're focused on drugs. It could be other illegal things coming into the port that would be a concern. And I don't feel that level of comfort. I just, with the information provided, and certainly unless you can provide us something else with the percentage of inspections, I just think we need to gear up more on our local side, because right now you're the main game in town under your jurisdiction to be able to do these type of inspections. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Tyree, did you have any questions on this area?
No, I don't. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are now going to move into the customs fines and penalties revolving fund status. So, Chief, can you just currently explain the current sources of revenue that Customs and Quarantine receives, and if COVID-19 has impacted those revenues with the amount And how can we help you moving forward?
Okay, so if we're not already aware, Guam Customs receives a bulk of its funding through the passenger fees received at the airport. And in pre-COVID times, we were receiving around $1.2 million monthly, which is sufficient to run the operations with its current state. However, with the plan to try and acquire more officers, that would mean that we would need to go through a rate adjustment. And we were working to fix that. Now, one of the things that COVID-19 had did was it really reduced our funding down to about 1%, 1 to 5% of what we normally collect. So fast forward to the budget cycle. I recall that when we submitted our budget, or when our budget got submitted, there was a portion that says special funds. So the anticipated collection for customs, I think was around $4 million. And I believe that when I testified, I said that we may not be able to meet that portion of the funding because of the low collection. So if you're asking where we need some assistance, I think that we may want to revisit how we arrived at being able to get the general fund and the special funds to be a little bit more, I guess, work in tandem to be able to support our operations, because once again, we're at the budget cycle. Once again, we have the general fund and the special funds and our budget being submitted. And if you take a look at the special fund and what it is expected to collect on paper, as opposed to the reality of today's situation with COVID-19, we are going to be running short, and then we would be then again requesting for supplemental appropriations to fund the shortfalls.
How much are you running short?
How much are we running short?
For fiscal year 21, we're looking at 2.4 million.
Yeah.
And where did the short come from? Was it because of the passenger fee?
Yes.
Yeah.
What areas in the revenue sources that customs have did you see the shortfall?
Passenger fee, as I said earlier, we're down to between 1% and 5% of the collection. So that is a big hit for us. If there's a way for us to be able to change our paradigm and maybe look at other avenues of being able to collect funding somehow, we will do that. But that's our greatest shortfall is mainly in the passenger inspections at the airport.
Okay. Senator Torres, do you have any questions at this time?
Yes, I was wondering, and the reduction in the collection of fees, that was a little hard to understand at first, because much of the testimony has been that the throughput, for example, at the port has in fact been up. It's like 1% higher year over year in comparison. And we know also that the activity of the post office has been very high. So the cargo coming through the airport has also been maybe not significantly reduced, just because of the movement of supplies and the continual organic needs of the community. But I guess that's one thing that we have to understand is what that impact is when the passenger facility fees are reduced to the degree. So that is mostly what it is, right? Because the fees that are attached to the cargo servicing at the airport and the port are by design pretty low. Is that correct, Director? It's almost designed to make Guam a duty-free type of port. So those fees are generally lower than, say, the passenger facility fees that you recoup from the airport or from the ship passengers that come through?
Yes, ma'am. There's two different fees that the customs is generating fund. Of course, we understand the passenger fee at the airport, and that is we normally charge $8.29 for every passenger, and then the other fee that goes with the Port Authority and cargo is different because at cargo terminal here we charge $5 for the first 100 pounds and 0.0012 for any pound after that. Down at the port, we charge $5 for the first 4,000 pounds and 0.0012 after the first 4,000 pounds. So there's two different fees that we're working here. And what we're seeing is that the impact of this fee, especially in the airport, the impact for the airport is that we pay rent at the airport. And so the shortfall that we're looking for fiscal year 2021 is mainly geared towards rental fees at the airport.
Okay, no, thank you for making that distinction because people, we talk about throughput, but the fact is the fees that are collected on that are really by design quite low compared to what we charge for the passenger facility charges and the per head count, which really makes a difference when you think about 1.5 down to what, 30,000 or 50,000 so far. So the reduction is just hit rock bottom. But all right, thank you. That clears up the loss in revenues for that fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Titegree, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As well, since we're talking on the subject line of fees and stuff, so earlier I asked the question about the cargo bill of lading is passed at a counter and most of them are physically inspected. Why not? And the question about the $25,000, I believe you have discretionary on any cargo that has not been, if there's a fine at your discretion, I believe it's 25,000 for any opening of sealed cargo.
Yes.
Can you tell me, okay, and where does that, right, and where does that money, oh, I'm sorry, say it again, I'm sorry to interrupt, I just want to know where that money goes, what fund does it go into, and how many times have that been charged?
Thank you for the question. All contains to violations that are imposed.
Let me give you my number.
At the port are collected and deposited into the customs inspection fund. Then go to the special fund being collected. Yes, so all those funds that are collected are deposited into the customs inspection fund.
I'm sorry, Mr. Prado, I had some technical difficulty here at my office. Did you answer the question with regards to how many times have that fine has been implemented? Because it is at the discretion of the director.
Yes, since I came in, and let me give you an overview of this particular law. If I'm not mistaken, this law was enacted back in the late 90s. The late 90s. And I did recall that that particular year, we had imposed a violation and a $25,000 fine was imposed. When I came in 2019, that was the only fine that was imposed from the late 90s all the way up to 2019. Since I came in, I've issued or imposed 5 container seal violations for a total of $150,000 that was deposited into the customs inspection fund.
Okay. Since you've been in there. Okay, thank you so much for that response. And Director Pareto, do you plan on providing well, what's your plan? Because the budget is so, it's not projecting as anticipated. Anticipating, I think it's even lower than what was anticipated considering COVID. What is the plan now that you're going to, it looks like you're going to lose about $3 million that's been appropriated to you. So what is the plan for customs to cover this shortfall?
I've submitted my shortfall recommendations to the front office, and I've advised them that because of COVID-19, it has greatly impacted the funding source for the agency. And so because of COVID-19, it's hard to predict at this point in time whether or not we should be able to raise the fee, which I feel that it's not a workable situation right now because we cannot establish a threshold insofar as how to gauge what fee that we're gonna or amount that we're gonna arrive to. There's no passengers coming in at the airport right now. We average about 300 passengers a day, as compared to almost 5,000 passengers a day during pre-COVID. My information that I've got is that hopefully that just for fiscal year 2021, that maybe we might be lucky to see at least 80,000 passengers, which I am very optimistic about that. For me, even if I was going to recommend that in order for me to work a plan so that I can cover the shortfall, increasing the fee is not going to help. For the simple reason is that we cannot just base our threshold on the number of passengers coming in, because that will not even be close to what we need to run this operation. And that's where I'm at with that situation right now. And I'm hoping that Bureau Budget will make some recommendations as far as how to manage the shortfall that we're experiencing within the agency. And my feeling right now is that by the end of third quarter, that we won't have enough money to even pay our rent, to even pay our utilities. Yeah. So I'm working with the administration in trying to see what's the best approach to mitigate this particular problem.
Okay. Well, that was my next question. If you heard from the front office yet on how they're going to assist you moving forward with this great shortfall that we're seeing this every month, through the special funds. And I think because, Madam Chair, that's myself as well as Senator Frank Blas have been looking into the use tax, because 65 million is being escaped, from based on the OPA's report, about 65 million. And this would be very helpful to customs if we can go at it. So we're hoping to work on that to Director Pareto and help customs out as much as we can to provide the funding that you need. And any funding that was supposed to go your way that's not sufficient, I think that customs should be getting a little bit more percentage on some of these areas where you do get a percentage of fees. Should be increased to help stabilize this very, very important agency, our eyes and ears at the border. So I appreciate all your hard work that Customs does, Chief and Colonel. Thank you so much for your time as well. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Tiedegree. Senator Brown, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not so much a question, but just following up on the comments by Senator Teitigui. I think that's something that needs to be looked at is certainly the budget, because I think the expectation that the legislature perhaps is going to be able to appropriate is going to be really challenging government-wide, just considering the circumstance we've been in with regards to this pandemic, the decrease in overall revenue that's coming into the government of Guam. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I mean, obviously, to go from 5,000 passengers to 300 passengers a day, I just want to quickly ask, how are you having your personnel manage this, since there's such a substantial decrease in the amount of passengers that Customs has to conduct inspections and coming through the airport? How are you managing your personnel with this considerable decrease?
Because of the low tax on the airport, we're redirecting some of our resources, for example, down to the port, and to help with the inspection process down at the port. And of course, that's temporary, because we know that sooner or later the flights are going to start coming in. But at this point in time, we have decided to use some of these officers to help with the inspection. We also are using some of our officers to help with the kickback, the quarantine facility down at 2 months. And there's still a requirement at the airport for the minimum to include. We still, because although the flight has decreased, we still have to maintain a certain level of operation at the airport to handle all the other flights that are coming in. We're still seeing flights like cargo flights that are coming in, although they're coming in as sparingly, but we still need to do our work and board every flight and review the manifest that's coming in. So resources are being directed. We are also actively increasing our manpower up at Anderson because of the activities up there. So some of the resources are also being channeled up to the to Anderson Air Force Base. And of course, I just mentioned that I've increased the manpower at the Canine section. I've managed to move 4 additional officers to start Canine training. And that's the resources that's being provided to the Special Enforcement Division.
Well, thank you for that response. I think it's very informative, at least to let us know how you're maximizing the use of your personnel under these current circumstances. And certainly, I'm sure we're all going to be keeping an eye on the financial side of the house, just because, I think the general fund budget is already being stressed and impacted, and that impact is multiplied. I don't know that there's an expectation of appropriation that's going to come to resolve that issue. So maybe some of the recommendations that Senator Teitigui and Senator Blas looked at probably need to be seriously pursued, because I think in the near future we're in a decline. And of course, I mean, you have to be able to pay your personnel for the work that they're doing, but I don't think that's something that should be left to the 12th hour. We're getting up against a paycheck and the revenue's not there to pay it, especially because the intent, and I was back in the legislature back in the day when the intent very much was put in place for Customs to become self-sufficient with the revenue stream that was provided. So, having to come back to the general fund during a time of challenge is going to be something that, there's just limited resources moving forward. But thank you very much for your response. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Director Pareto, what is the amount of work percentage-wise that CQA officers utilize to address the federal mandates?
I would say that we are utilizing our officers 100% of the time to enforce mandates, especially from the federal side. With all the federal laws that we're enforcing, each and every inspection process that they're doing has one or the other has to deal with regulatory requirements, either for USDA, DOT, US.
Are all of these mandates funded?
Are they all funded?
Are they all funded?
These are funded. None of these are funded.
They're unfunded mandates.
Unfunded mandates.
Okay. What would be the cost of these unfunded mandates if we were to put a dollar figure of it for you to engage in meeting these requirements?
We don't want to just, Senator, I don't have that amount at this time, but I'm willing to come back and at least provide you some sort of information on that issue.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to discuss this further because in the past we have had former directors of customs and even within the leadership of customs asking us to look for avenues to federalize customs, the Guam Customs Authority. And so if this is a discussion that we need to have because we are unable to meet the requirements or we don't have the revenue and the resources to continue to fund customs to do their job, to meet their mission, then I would like to have the discussion with you in the near future. I'd like to thank you for and your panel and all the Customs and Quarantine Agency for the amount of work that they do, especially with the limited resources that you're experiencing. I'd like to adjourn this oversight hearing, but I do want to anticipate us coming back within the next 2 weeks or 3 to discuss plans at how we're going to address the shortfall that Customs was experiencing. What is the movement that the front office is going to give you, the solutions that they will provide, and also to take a closer look on how we can ensure that you receive your working dogs if there's something that we need to push on our end, and any of the other challenges that Custom needs to address in providing 100% of inspections at the port rather than just the limited inspections that they're doing today. Okay, and I believe we're going to do a walkthrough at the port, and we were requesting with Customs to be present so that they can demonstrate for us their roles on the cargo throughput process. Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you for your flexibility with the level of questions that we've had. And I'd like to congratulate everyone at Customs for their outstanding work. And Chief Perez, we're also going to make sure that we stay abreast with your committee that was created in response to the Public Law 35, I think it was 35-105, which is Senator Torres's bill that she proposed for the automation of customs. And we want to ensure that the capability is redundant and straight through to meet the capability also of the port. So we don't want you to get a completely different system and then the port get a different system and they're not able to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so please ensure that you have that throughput, that kind of capability where it's interoperable. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, senators, for your presence today, and thank you for your input. It is now 15:29 in the afternoon, and we will adjourn this oversight hearing. Thank you and have a good day. God bless.
Thank you.
God bless.